Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want, and or what my guest wants, and we'll get to that in a minute. And for this episode of the Wasteland Spotlight, we are spotlighting John Cusack across the 80s and 90s. And joining me for this episode, who chose this topic, is Patrice from SiftPop. Patrice, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. And let's get dark real quick because the first movie that we're going to be talking about is dark subject matter, but very funny, and that is Better Off Dead. So after his girlfriend Beth Truss ditches him for boorish ski jock Roy Stalin, sad sack high school student Lane Meyer decides that suicide is the only answer, but his inept attempts bring him nothing but agony and embarrassment. So, can you imagine going into a studio that's not Netflix and going up and trying to pitch this today?
I can't imagine making a meeting with someone named Savage Steve Holland bringing you this script and even having an idea of what could possibly be on the pages because he didn't
Yes.
just direct, he wrote it. So
So, yes, written and directed by Savage Steve Holland, obviously starring John Cusack. That's why we're here. But, Patrice, what are your general thoughts on Better Off Dead?
I probably saw this movie entirely too young because because it's been one of my favorite 80s movies since I was in
Mm,
middle school. So I love John Cusack. It's one of the
mm,
first movies I ever actually bought for a physical media collection,
mm,
which I know also sounds a little odd since I was probably still middle school, maybe
mm,
freshman in high school. But I love satire. I love movies like Airplane and Top Secret, and this had a really Top Secret vibe to me because I had already seen Top Secret, Real Genius were also kind of favorites around that time. And when I saw this, it kind of had the same vibe as Top Secret because the more you watch it, the more you notice little things that they really put the effort into the tiny details. I
mm.
mean, like the tiniest details in this movie just had effort put into them. And I think that's funny. Like there's one scene where he's running through a park, he steps in someone's picnic. As they continue talking later on throughout the scene, you still see in the background that family cleaning up from where he ran through the picnic. And that's a detail that they didn't have to add, but it just like another layer of humor to the entire situation because there's also two other things going on while they're talking,
Mm.
which to me is just I really appreciate the level of detail that was put into just the tiny laughs. So it's not just a big story going on that you're kind of like, oh, this is ridiculous, but you're laughing at all the little things the whole time.
It's it's funny because I was just recording about Airplane yesterday with my wife for one of my podcasts, and nothing background jokes cannot be the background joke that cannot be beat is the two the like man and woman on the loudspeakers at the airport at the beginning of that movie arguing about abortion while he's trying to really get to the plane. And just like what is going on here? But no, that kind of when you can take advantage of the little details, and obviously there's a lot of energy put into this movie, and you could definitely tell based off of having watched this for the first time that Savage Steve Holland has a lot of passion and energy for his filmmaking because this has that zany kind of ridiculous energy. And you kind of need to commit to that if you're going to go this dark with your gallows humor of this is about a kid who keeps trying to commit suicide and embarrassingly failing, which,
Mm.
like, a door
Yeah.
smashing into him.
Like his mom didn't even know he was there. So it's like, how is
Uh,
he embarrassed? But okay. Like he's just like, ah.
um, it's just those kinds of moments in this movie where it's just like, he's just casually trying to hang himself, and it's just
Mhm.
like, nope, back door swings open,
Yeah.
and it's just like, honey, and just completely leaning into that
Mhm.
crazy kind of humor. And I have my main experience with John Cusack had been mostly him as an adult actor, and probably late 90s forward. So I hadn't watched a whole lot of his earlier stuff until relatively recently. So this he just has he's that kid where it's just like he could easily play a teenager that's just so self-loathing and just what was me and just play that role so authentically. Because also he could do that as he gets older too.
Right. I mean, you see it like when you watch these older ones, you can see how it just translated into his adult career and just
Yep.
still works. I mean, like by the time you get to High Fidelity, he's been this type of character. Like this is John Cusack's character in
Yes.
whatever he may be in. Like,
This is 100% his vibe. Um,
mm,
and this film, which also small little thing, the fact that we got Booger popping up in these movies from Revenge of the Nerds.
Curtis Armstrong is a gem. I mean, he's a staple of the 80s, and I
Yep.
love that even at this point in his career, he still is like parlaying that into being himself on other like
Yes.
he was in How I Met Your Mother as himself. And all the other places he pops up like as himself or as like Booger as a grown up. I mean, he was in an
Yes.
episode of Psych where I really just felt like he was the same guy, just he's a security guard. And it's like that tracks for the kind of like career this guy
Mhm.
could have if he had grown up.
Because like he was a fun supporting character in this, and like I'm like, he looks like an adult. And then you
Yeah.
realize he is 32 years old.
Mhm. And
It's
the only way they try to play that off is he's been in high school 7 years, and it's like, even if dude's 20, 21, he still looks 30.
yep. And it's that Steve Buscemi fellow kids meme, for sure. And it definitely is that. But like people didn't really care that much about this kind of stuff in the
No.
80s and the 90s. It took until Spider-Man Homecoming for us to get an actual teenager to play Peter Parker. So like
Right. Yeah.
Hollywood's not really caring about that too much. I do find it very interesting. Like I liked I liked the dynamic that started growing between him and Monique
Mhm.
in the film. Interesting choice of French accents and
I mean,
everything,
yes. Isn't
which
she from New York or something? Like, she is very
Di
American.
yes, Diane Franklin
Yes.
screams, I am from France very much,
Right.
obviously. And you would think like that's such an 80s thing. It continued in the 90s too. American
Mhm.
Pie, Shannon Elizabeth, foreign
Mhm.
exchange student. So like that was still a thing going on into the 90s too. And it's so interesting because like I was born in 1991. So like I know all the tropes of like 90s movies, early 2000s movies, and then realizing so many of those teenage movie tropes were the same thing
Came
as
from
the
yeah. The 80s
80s.
ones are starting all these, and it just kept going in the 90s, so it just depends on when you started watching teen comedy, if you thought it
Mhm.
was the first time or not.
It took me a little bit to realize that was actually that Dan Schneider in this movie, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I just watched that whole entire Max series. Um, which the thing is, this film is so crazy, over the top, ridiculous. And we'll get to our next film, which I feel like is even more so.
Yes.
But this film still has like that charm. And, you know, I can appreciate dark humor. Like, I don't have dark humor. That's not really my thing, but I do like dark humor. And this pushes the right buttons to get the right kinds of jokes out of the awkwardness of,
Right.
like, because here's the thing. At the end of the day, does Lane really want to kill himself?
No,
And
I mean, he backs
it's,
out every time is what's
yes.
the best part of it. But
Mm.
he keeps trying, and then he's like, "You know what? No, no." Like, he's talking to himself every time, and then someone else comes along and is almost the problem.
And it's just the kind of thing where it's like, it uses dark humor and dark themes to tackle there's an awkwardness, of course, to being a teenager. In middle school and high school, it's such a weird time in people's lives. And speaking for like American culture specifically, it is such an awkward and weird time. I hated both of them from a personal experience standpoint. Loved college much more. I would never want to be a teenager again. I like being an adult. And watching this, I appreciated the way that it went about this. same, because like obviously this is back in the 80s, but there's been teenage films for years and decades, and this film found a dark, twisted kind of way to shake that genre. Because of course it's about a girl.
Mm.
'Cause
And when you're in high school, when the girl leaves you, that is a thing to obsess about. And oh my gosh, my life is over. And that's why even that classroom scene, like everything's exaggerated. Because when you feel
mm,
like that's where it's so crazy that it gets emotions so correct, even in this
mhm,
satirical way, is that he's in that class and he's not prepared because he's been upset about breaking up. Everyone else seems ridiculously prepared. And of course he's
mhm.
going to get called on. And of course he's going to have to go to the board unprepared. And then just the way it exaggerates how he feels about the perception of everyone else in that class, like that really like screams high school to me because that's
Yes.
exactly how that is when you're feeling that way.
And here's the thing. It's like a 15, 16-year-old. That is the worst thing that has ever happened to you.
Mhm.
Obviously, unfortunately, some young people have to deal with a lot worse things. But like this is from the lens of like this is an 80s teen movie.
Right.
This is the worst possible
Yeah,
thing that could
that's
happen to you. And
exactly.
and little does Lane know, so much worse will happen to him in his life. And he'll just learn how to process it maturely and move on with his life. But at this point, he doesn't have those mechanisms of
Right.
self-reflection and everything. And, you know, it's a fun kind of experience thinking back to like a time where it's like, yeah, I was an idiot once, where it's just like,
Mhm.
wow, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. I never want to, I don't want to move on. For me,
Oh, absolutely.
it was like I had moments like I got bullied a lot, for being a fat kid. I was a fat kid from second grade
Nerd.
until
Yeah.
college. They didn't even need to get to the nerd part for me.
Oh.
The fat part was I got plenty. I almost quit my track team because of the bullying. And there was a time where I was like, I can't take this anymore. And that would have been bad for me if I gave up on that and stuff like that. And we all have those kinds of moments where it's like we almost made rash decisions because of
Mhm.
bad experiences. And I work at a college, so I work with a lot of 18 to 22-year-olds
Oof.
who will be going through bad experiences where they'll rashly be like, I'm done. And I'm gonna sound like that aging millennial at this point where it's just like I feel like a lot of Gen Z, the cord for like when you blow stuff up is so much shorter. It's just like, wow, this one bad thing happened at my job. I'm gonna go get a new job. It's just like,
Right. They asked me to do my job today, and I don't want to do my job today
or
because they
even
didn't
like,
ask me nicely.
or there's even specific situations where it's like, yes, something legitimately bad happened at work. That doesn't mean you throw out the whole entire job and experience, and that's a hard lesson to learn. And this
Mhm.
film hits on that so well about that kind of no, it's going to happen. You're going to learn
Mhm.
perseverance, and that's the most important thing because he gave up on his girlfriend Beth and moved on and met Dominique, the those unexpected not
Yeah.
French exchange students,
Uh,
and he can have a happy relationship. And also, there's so much more experience
yeah.
to have after this. You're only in high school. A couple other funny things. Quick throwing away. Nuns.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh, yes.
that one particular running gag of him being chased.
But by the Karate Kid nemesis.
Yes, it's just like it just keeps coming and back in the most unexpected places. He's up on
Mhm.
the mountain in the middle of
Yeah.
nowhere. It just shows up. So not only does this film have a dark humor sense of processing some really relatable themes, it also has some really silly humor that just keeps coming back and having some fun with it.
Yeah. We've been quoting the $2 for like 30 years in my house. Anytime we need some cash, it's like $2. 4 weeks, that's 20 papers, $2.
It's two
Gee, Donnie,
dollars.
I haven't got a dime. I didn't ask for a dime. $2.
Th-
Cash.
Now, this film certainly has that like manic energy of
Mhm,
80s teen movies where it's just like a lot of them. I feel like John Hughes films are the most focused of
mhm,
them. And it makes sense. Like John Hughes was an incredible writer and like really had a very specific mission. This definitely is that kind of like 80s teen movie that just bouncing all over the place, but not as much as our next one. But before I move on,
mhm.
Patrice, did you have anything else you wanted to add about Better Off Dead?
Just that I feel like the parents are unsung heroes of the background of this movie
Mhm.
because they have his dad has like this great little soliloquy about describing the car in the driveway being in its automotive cocoon, and I just love it. I mean, you don't even know he's a lawyer at that point. So the way he's been talking, like memorandum, like wait, like like just the way he talks, and then about halfway through, when you realize he's a lawyer, it's like, oh, that all makes sense. But I love his dialogue; just is so on point for that type of parent, and he's still so tolerant, but he still wants his kid to have fun and experiences, and he does. I love that he's trying while they completely ignore everything that's happening with that brother the entire time. Which, if you watch this, you got to pay attention to all the little things in the paper and stuff he's cutting out, or it just doesn't pay off. And there is a mid-credit scene that is it's kind of because it's not right at the end. You got to actually watch the credits for a second to get the
Yep.
payoff. But I just love the family dynamic is so much fun. And even the mom is just, an 80s mom dialed up to 11 with
Mm.
wanting to use the recipes and be the perfect hostess. And I just love it and be the perfect Christmas presents, even though like she always gets it wrong. And I think it's great.
You know you've reached a specific place in your life where you start to really appreciate the parent characters in kid
Yes.
shows and like teen movies and stuff like that.
Mhm,
And I I guess I've always been an old soul because a lot of the times my favorite characters are the parents and
mhm.
stuff. Like American Pie, like by far my favorite character is Noah
Mhm.
Levinstein because there is
Yeah.
nobody better than Eugene Levy.
Mhm.
And when I saw American Reunion in theaters with my brother and my cousin, the two who showed me those movies when I was 10 years old and way too young to be watching them. Um, when he actually got an arc and you actually got to find out what his first name was, Noah, I'm just like, this is justice. This makes me so happy.
Right? Yeah.
But but no, you fun parent characters from kids and teen movies and
Mhm.
shows, we salute you.
Yes.
Now, we're back with Savage Steve Holland and his movie One Crazy Summer. And I'll just say this is one crazy movie. An
Yes.
aspiring teenage cartoonist and his friends come to the aid of a singer trying to save her family property from developers. This movie, right off the bat, what I'll say is this is the most manic, just all over the place kind of teen movie. And I feel like that was one of the things that held it back for me from enjoying it more. But I'll get to the things that I did like about it. But first, Patrice, what are your general thoughts about One Crazy Summer?
It's just so very 80s as far as all the
Mhm.
stuff like, we're trying to save something, a group of
Yep.
people that are just all kinds of outlandish, quirky people that come together, and, of
Mm,
course, they instantly meet someone who they instantly wanna help. The bad guys being so over the top. It's
mm,
got a really Caddyshack, like, Animal House kind of vibe to the villainous characters because they're so over the top with like,
mhm.
there's no way they'd be allowed to really be like this, right? But I love the cast. Like all of this cast is so ridiculous. You've got the youngest Murray brother as the best friend.
Yes.
You've got, just the amount of people in this. Jeremy Piven it's his first time in a Cusack movie because they're gonna pair up what 2, 3 more times over the
Mhm,
years, usually as friends, but still.
mhm.
You've got Needlemeyer from Animal House as the dad this time around, you know. is
Oh my God, can I just say that mustache is
and the
disgusting.
tan, and
Yes.
it's like he's I don't understand the look. It's so wrong. but also it's written and directed by a guy whose career was mostly animation up until this point, which also
Yep.
kind of helps explain the manic nature of all the ridiculous going on. He's used to working in a medium where you can do anything. So
These do
trying to
feel like cartoons come to life.
Right.
For sure.
Which and you get the animated portions in between too, which I always kinda liked. So I think this kinda started my love for seeing the little
Mhm.
animated snippets interspersed in a regular live action, but not interacting with the characters, but just
Yeah.
as a way to kinda continue the story in between. So I do kinda enjoy that aspect of it, but I think it's funny that the main character, John Cusack's named Hoops. He's horrible at basketball. I love it. Like, that's so ridiculous that there is not a thing this kid has done to show that he has any talent for this sport, but that's what everyone calls him. Like, 0 talent, but hey,
So
hoops.
I did love the animated interludes. Those were part of my favorite parts of the movie. I thought that was a fun,
Yeah.
creative aspect, and that makes a lot of sense coming from Savage Steve Holland. You had, like you said, well, Curtis Curtis Armstrong back again,
Mhm.
Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yes.
That voice is also Egg Stork. These names
Like, for the twins, yes.
and like Squid Calamari, like this. You know what? This movie is a cartoon.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's the actual live action parts are crazier than the interludes at
They
times.
are, and
Yeah,
considering there's fluffy bunnies and a rhino in there, it's kind of a tall order.
yeah. Like John Cusack yet again is really leaning into that specific kind of character, and it really works for him because he just he just sells that really well. Having somebody like a Demi Moore who obviously is like the knockout of the movie
Oh,
and
yeah.
like early on, and it's so funny that you brought up like Caddyshack and stuff like that. It's like I hate to break it to you, Patrice, Judge Smales exist all over the place for real. Oh, Billy, 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 Boo.
Oh,
Which I've watched Caddyshack an insane amount of times. So just throwing that out there. But and like we were talking about parents as well, and like you brought up Niedermeyer, Niedermeyer, Joe Flaherty. I I got on the Freaks and Geeks train really late,
mhm.
and
Yeah,
still
me too.
it still hurts me like everybody else that there's not more of it
Right.
to watch. But Joe Flaherty as like like a dad type character and stuff. It's just perfect.
But
He was great in Freaks and Geeks. He's
mhm.
fun in this. And it's just and I'm trying to think what was the yeah, where do I know him from? I think you're gonna miss this putt, you jackass. From Happy Gilmore. It's like say like I did grow up in the 90s and I watched an insane amount of Adam Sandler. So that's
Mhm.
where I know him from, but he's so good
He
in
used
this
to have
too.
his own show in the early '90s when Family Channel first came out. He was the dad in a really screwball show called Maniac Mansion, and he was turned into he was a scientist that turned himself into a fly. Like, and that's like the first time I remember him is from that show that was so off the wall. But then every other performance you see him in, I'm like, okay, it tracks. This guy knows what his career is, and he leaned into it 100%.
Hmm. I know for me, my like big 80s movies that I watched a lot growing up that were like this kind of like summer thing is I watched Summer Rental
Oh, yeah.
all the time, all the
Mhm.
time, and The Great Outdoors, love John Candy.
Yes. Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and this is those kinds of films like ratchet it up to 11. And you know what,
Right.
you bringing up that Holland was an animator and like it's starting to really click that it makes so much more sense that it has this kind of approach. And to be frank, the more I think about it and talk about this with you, I think I probably like this more a little bit more than I did upon reflection. But like it's still one of those kinds of things where like, do you want 93 minutes of just insanity?
R
Off the walls ridiculousness, laughs, silliness. very 80s nostalgia. This is the perfect example of all of those things just rolled up into one.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
the thing that you appreciate most about these kinds of movies and these teen movies from the 80s is just the insane amount of talent that there were in young actors at that
Right.
point.
It's
And
crazy. Like, just in
crazy.
one place, the amount of people they had. I mean, I think there's only really, like, 2 of them that didn't go on to have decent careers, like, in the I mean, that you know who a lot of these people are. Like, if someone says Bobcat, you know who he is. People know Curtis Armstrong. Like, they're not unknown actors, and at the very least, if you showed a picture of them to someone, "Oh, yeah, he was in blah, 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 blah," blah," like, they know everyone knows who these people
You
are.
played their voice.
Which Right. I mean, even yeah, even some of the, like, littler characters, like the grandma, like, everyone's seen
Mhm.
her and stuff, like, and which she was great in this, and just the way they have her, like, bra strap down the arm, coming to the table with the check, and I was like, "I love this woman. I love everything about her." Like, handing them, "Everything okay? Want any more of any?" "No, we're stuffed." And everyone just looking up and whistling when they hand the check to Lane.
Yeah,
She
Billy Bird has been in a
she's oh,
lot of
she's
things.
so fun. I just love seeing her pop up in anything. She's got a
Good
great voice, great personality. She's just good for these quirky moms and grandmas in these type of movies.
and good for her. She made it to 94.
Mhm.
So,
And then, even Laura Waterbury pops up again. She was the mom in Better Off, or the next door
mhm,
neighbor's mom in Better Off Dead, but she's the crossing guard at the beginning of this, and, she's kinda
mhm,
in on the joke with the little sister, which cracks me up. So,
mhm.
I just all that little stuff, and I love the little sister in this also is
Also,
just one of those things to keep an eye on. You
mhm.
got the little brother in the last one, you got the little sister in this one. They're both oddballs that are just they've got their own agenda, and they're really just unexpectedly pop up doing things that you're like, "Oh, okay." Like, that's what you've been up to.
It's one of those kinds of it's those kinds of situations in movies where it's like there is a whole other movie
Mhm.
that followed them.
Exactly.
And exactly. And when you can make that very believable and sell that, that's
Mhm.
fantastic. And both of these movies had those kinds of characters where it's just like, you know what? I would like oh, One Crazy Summer 1.5. And it's
Right?
just, instead of Timon and Pumbaa, you're
Timon and
following.
Pumbaa doing 1.5, you get the sibling. That's
Yes.
exactly the kind of like, if you're gonna do a remake of something, that's the story I wanna see, is what else was going on in the other room and at the other location.
Because like this town could not have just been like concentrated mayhem just around John Cusack. There had to be
Right.
so much more mayhem going on.
Oh, yeah. Like, how'd the dog end up in the cone to begin with? Like, I need the prequel backstory of what's going on in this girl's life that she is that attached to that dog too, because she doesn't even want people making fun of him. So that's the story right there.
So obviously we just had two very crazy live action cartoon 80s teen movies. And now for something completely different.
Completely
And
different.
yes, jumping into 1994, it's a Woody Allen film. Piece of crap. But this movie is not a piece of crap. And this is Bullets Over Broadway. In New York in 1928, a struggling playwright is forced to cast a mobster's talentless girlfriend in his latest drama in order to get it produced. Right off the bat, Patrice, the second the credits rolled on this, I'm like, this is one of my favorite Woody Allen movies, and this was like, and this came out in a great year for movies in 1994. And
Yes.
this is a great movie. And I'm just like, wow, because like I'm insane and have a spreadsheet where I keep track of all the movies that I've watched from every year and rank them.
Mhm.
This like shot well towards the top. But Patrice, what are your general thoughts on Bullets Over Broadway?
I love this movie for so many reasons. And to be
Mhm.
very upfront, I am not a Woody Allen fan in general. Like, I think of all his movies, this is the only one I've ever watched again. And I've watched it a lot. Like, this has been I bought this movie as soon as I saw it. Like, I had it on VHS, and then I had it on DVD, and now I've got it on Blu-ray because I absolutely I've always been a fan of movies that are about writers and about like
Mhm,
movies about making a play or about making a movie. Like, I love movies about like kind of the behind the scenes aspect of the person
mhm,
creating the art because I think that's very interesting. Like the
mhm,
fact that people can imagine an entire story and then make it visual just blows my mind. I can sit here and write a review of someone's stuff, but I can't imagine me sitting down and being able to come up with an entire story about and visuals and how people would interact with each other and what it would look like on stage. So that's always like impressed me and I've always just found it visually and intellectually interesting to watch. I love that this takes place in the 20s because I love that Cole Porter kind of stuff going on in the background the whole time and
mhm,
the comments about that time frame. Like, because I've actually watched a lot of Cole Porter documentaries and the Lovely and stuff like that. I love all that
mhm,
kind of stuff about him because it was a very exciting time in Broadway and, in
mhm,
music and things like that. So the fact that they have a lot of that going on in the background, like the details in this are amazing. And not just the
mhm,
details in the dialogue, the details in the costuming in the actual sets. Like this is very well made just in general. They didn't skimp on anything in this.
mhm.
I mean, there's full like musical numbers going on in the background just to have a dinner scene. And they're all
Yeah.
different. It's not the same one every time. Like they've got at least I think 4 or 5 different musical numbers, different costumes, different
Mhm.
dancing and singing going on throughout this movie when they're in the restaurant. So I just the I that blows my mind. Like just the amount of everything going on here. And then you look at the cast and it's insane. Like it's
Insane.
absolutely insane who is in this movie. Like
We'll
even
we'll
in the
get to that.
smaller roles.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But first off, it makes so much sense that you nominated Noises Off
Right.
for
Yeah.
my review request, which also we're recording this on the first of the
Mhm.
month, so I'll be
Oh
awaiting
yeah.
Patrice's nomination before the end of today. But this definitely was the at the point where Woody Allen was at his like he just had 2 decades of great films. So basically at this point he can make what he wanted. And he definitely had the budget to make this work to all
Right.
those details. And one of the best things about his filmography is he loves New York
Mhm.
and he captures New York. And this film really captures New York of this specific time period so well, just incredibly well. But let's dive into this cast because you
Oh
do
yeah.
have John Cusack, who a bit of self-loathing, also very in his own mind about
Yes.
like he I love the film Barton Fink, and he's the
Mhm.
same kind of character of
Yes.
like, I am making a difference. I'm an
Mhm.
artist.
Like
And
this is my art. Like don't change my art.
and he gets so full of himself. And I love
Yes.
the journey that he goes on because which also, as an Italian American from New Jersey, um, seeing most representation of Italian Americans in movies for a long time being mobsters, and then don't even get me started on Jersey Shore. Um, but I love Peach in this because Chaz Commentary represents a character who is in the mob, but he's so much
So much more.
more than that,
Mhm.
and which is fantastic because he is a writer,
Mhm.
wrote
Right?
like Bronx Tale and stuff like that, which is so great. And I loved him in this. His energy, his confidence, and his
Mhm.
attitude, where he's just like, no, this
Yeah.
is how it should be. And he just embodies that so perfectly.
Mhm.
And his whole dynamic with David
They're so
Shane,
great together.
so great together. And they're such an odd couple pairing in a
Right.
movie. And because they are in character and it works
Mhm.
so perfectly with that,
Mhm.
it is the Billy Crystal, Robert De Niro kind of like, we're two completely different people,
Mhm.
but that's the joke of it. And that's the fun
Right.
part of it. The Diane Weist, who's
Oh,
the big star. And
she's like Myra Rose before Myra Rose.
Oh
That's
my
every
God.
like, after you watch this, having seen Schitt's Creek, she's very like, I can't not see Moira being this person, you know?
Oh my God. Now
She's
I
got that
like,
accent, you can't put
why
your
didn't
finger
we
on the accent. Yeah.
why didn't we have Catherine O'Hara in this movie?
I mean,
Which,
she's the only other person I can think of that could have done that, but didn't
oh my
Diane
God.
Wiest win the Oscar for this?
She was this character
She was at
really
least
is familiar, isn't it?
nominated.
Yeah, so Oscar winner Best Supporting Actress Diane Wiest, Oscar
Mhm.
nominated supporting actor Chaz Palminteri, which this is 94, so I guess he lost to oh, I guess he also lost to Martin Landau for Ed Wood. What a stacked list of
I
supporting
mean,
actors.
seriously.
Crazy. Jennifer Tilly was nominated for
Mhm.
supporting actress too. Like Jennifer Tilly
Tried
is he is such a
she
specific
very.
actor. And when she's in the right movie doing that is and she is perfect.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I hate her. I
Yes.
hate her
You want
so
like, you
much.
can't stand that she's ruining this production, and he can't do anything about it. You feel his frustration every
Yes.
time she says a horrible line or when she's questioning him. Like, nobody talks like that. Why would I say that? Nobody talk This isn't how people talk. And then when Cheech gets on board, it's like, "Oh, another someone else wants to chime in." And then everyone gangs up on David, and I'm
That's
just like, "Oh, this poor guy just wants to try to put on his production, and he's got this horrible woman butchering his words, not able to act at all. Just she's
because like
so horrible."
Jennifer Tilly was like liar liar Jennifer Tilly to me for because
Yeah.
like that was probably the first thing that I saw her in, and then obviously she had such a big career with Chucky
Chucky,
and
yeah.
Child's Play and stuff like that, and she's so perfect in this. Mary Louise Parker, I really enjoy her. And things Jack Warden, if it was like he has such a distinct voice. If I did not
Mhm.
hear his voice, I would not have guessed it was him because he has such a different look. Because like I know him as like older with like the mustache and
Mhm.
everything, and I really liked him as Julian Marks, the like the one who gets stuff done. That's why
Right.
he's here and trying to keep things on track and not turn this into a complete train wreck.
Right.
Um,
But he knows
oh,
what has to happen to get this
yes,
production done, and
yeah,
he's like, "David, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be
yeah,
fine."
it's gonna
And
be
then it's like,
fine.
it's just, "I got the funding, it's fine, we gotta make one small concession."
We
Olive.
got we got Rob Reiner, who
Oh,
it's like that's a lot less than I thought he would be, but boy does he make it. And the last thing that we'll talk about for this movie is we have to talk about that last scene because but Tracy Ullman, Harvey Firestein, Jim Broadbent, and
oh, yeah.
Tim damn eating just
And then the corset, the chicken coming out of his pocket, like, all the just hot water and lemon. And then when David's doing his diary, he's like, "I noticed he's no longer sticking to just hot water and lemon."
just like slowly like pulling like handfuls of bagels
Yes.
off the table and stuff like
Like,
that.
on the sly, like, grabs one, then grabs another, and, like, is buttering them, and then just, because
The,
he can feel the stress that's happening.
the
And just
cast is great. The story progression is really interesting, and the shift in terms of like that trope of I'm getting all this praise, but somebody else is doing this. The
Mhm.
if ratatouille of it all, if you will,
Right.
um,
Mhm.
where instead of a small rat, you have an Italian mobster um, dictating what really works about this
Right.
play. And I love all the
Right up until his
fawning.
death. Like, that's the best part.
Yeah, last words,
His
and
last words.
and it just he was a creator. Teach
Mhm.
was an artist. He was the
Yes.
artist,
Mhm.
and that kind of dynamic. And I just love the fawning that all these characters do over his work.
Oh,
And
yeah.
It's not his work. And then it's just like, no, don't say anything. Don't say a word.
No, no, don't speak. Don't speak. She's she's so amazing. Like,
And
and then when he goes to his girlfriend, like, do you the man or the artist? Like, I could love a man who wasn't an artist, but I can't love an artist who wasn't a man.
damn. And then the fact that
Just
she
I
was
love
cheating
it.
on him
Yeah,
with
with
Reiner,
yeah, yeah, with Flender.
Sheldon Flender, which, okay, that last scene, I think the last scene in this movie is the greatest thing Woody Allen ever wrote. That back and forth between David and his girlfriend and Rob Reiner and the woman across the
The
way
woman
and
across the street just is so amazing. I thought it was okay. Was it mechanical? Like, I love how like just they derail themselves, but they stay on focus, and it's so amazing because the conversations are still going, but like they, I don't know, I love it because the fact that you can go off track, stay on track, but have all that humor interspersed in it while still getting to your point is just so it's great dialogue. And I loved it. Like that was the perfect and it kind of started out a little like that too. If you actually are listening to even the chit chatty stuff when they're sitting there like, oh my God, these people are so pompous and full of themselves. Like, do they even hear what they're saying?
I'm legitimately uh trying to find on the quotes on IMDb some of the specific lines. Sheldon, you're all missing the point. The point is, I can give pleasure many times a day. Rita, oh, now really, Flender? What does quantity got to do with it, Sheldon? Quantity affects quality. David says who? Sheldon, Karl Marx. Rita, oh, so now we're talking economics, Sheldon. Economics.
It's
That
so great.
it was just it was I trying to remember the last time I laughed so hard sitting at home watching a movie. So you get a little more infectious if you have people in a theater and
Mhm.
like you're but like I'm sitting at home and like that's not me. So
Mhm.
hard that whole back and forth because it becomes so quickly about Rob Rob Reiner's sex life.
Right.
So
Yes.
and just the woman talking from across the way, just interjecting,
Uh,
and the
as
camera,
she's just
triangle camera.
casually and she just keeps casually smoking her cigarette as she's hanging out the fire escape. Like, it's not like she's talking about going to the store. Like, it's so great.
It's so great, so works. And we'll jump slightly into the 2000s, ever so slightly, with
Just a
High
little dip.
Fidelity. Yeah, just a little dip from Stephen Frears. And we have Rob, a record store owner and compulsive list maker, recounts his top five breakups, including the one in progress. Aren't we all movie lovers,
I mean,
constant list makers? Aren't we? But yes, so Patrice, what are your general thoughts on High Fidelity?
um, I saw this when it came out in the theaters and loved
Okay.
it because it
Mhm.
feels very much like that time. I mean, looking back at this, like you feel back, like you can smell the record shop watching
Yes.
this because it was a real thing at that point in time. And going to these obscure, like you knew where the shop that had the newest releases or where you could get. I can remember we had a really tiny like Beach Records was this place that we'd
Mhm.
go, and it's where I could find like import Smashing Pumpkins like B-sides. Like, like it just I remember this like vibe and this like part of like the 90s, early 2000s
Yeah.
where you did have like the owner always seemed kind of snobbish to an extent if you
Mhm.
didn't say things the right way or you talk about music wrong. So you had to almost prepare to go in or they are like that record like Rob lived in my town, I swear. Like that dude owned the shop because I've had these experiences as a customer in a shop
Mhm.
trying to get the music I want because you couldn't just go. online to find stuff. And like at that point, Circuit City and Best Buy were just starting to really get into like the bigger music and movie game. So you had to
Mhm.
know places like this to be able to find the media you wanted, because otherwise you're listening to a radio hoping maybe, oh, there's that show on Thursday night where they play nothing but, singles off of, second album, whatever. You had to
Yeah.
like know when to listen or where to watch to see and hear certain things unless you could find a place like this. So I very much like I think they nailed the culture and the feeling
Mhm.
of this type of like these types of people. And I love John Cusack's character like turning his relationships into the list, like
Yeah.
everything. Like I love that it's not just about listing like top 5 things to listen to on a Monday, which I love that too. Like I love just
Mhm.
on the fly, like we're making a list right now, like top 5 songs about death, top 5 songs about it. Like I love that he did it through his relationships too. And the way he went about talking about them and looking back and realizing, oh, was I not really seeing this right? Like, because that's exactly how it is looking back now at that time in your life. Like, oh my gosh, like when he realizes Charlie's a horrible person. Like, I
Yeah.
love that he actually could realize, oh, it wasn't me. She's horrible. Like, it's this isn't about me. Like,
It wasn't me, it was you.
it
Um,
was you.
yeah, this film, which is from Stephen Frears, who let's just I'm just gonna read off his top 4 films here on IMDb. We have Dangerous Liaisons, Philomena, Dirty Pretty Things, and The Queen. So, like, this man has range. And this film
For
has
sure.
so much personality, and I love it. And it only works because John Cusack also has the right personality to sell it. Because
100%.
you need somebody that you can point the camera at them at a given moment, and they have to be able to work that camera.
Mhm.
And you have the Matthew Brodericks who did in Ferris Bueller just perfectly. Um, More recently, you have people like Ryan Reynolds who do it as Deadpool all the
Mhm.
time and talking to the
Right?
audience. But like here, it feels so authentic because he's being really honest and open. And
Mhm.
that's what Rob's whole process is in this film, is telling us
Mhm.
about his heartbreaks, what he's had to do to grow, and these different kinds of relationships. And I love the bouncing back and forth and going back to these relationships. And Catherine Zeta Jones is so beautiful and so alluring. And also, God, Charlie is a horrible person.
Just uh so
She
horrible.
she
But
is the person that does the the right things while being an asshole about it.
right.
And she's so full of herself. And Catherine Zeta-Jones just sells that so well because she can really play that. Even just something as silly as Rock of Ages, where she's like the leader of that mom group and
Right.
stuff like that. Stuff like that. Which also, I'm trying to remember if I remember that Lisa Bonet was in this when I watched the show that had
Oh,
Zoe Kravitz in it, and I'm
right.
like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And I'm like, child?
Mhm.
Like, see, it seemed like a weird choice if they weren't going to make that connection on some level.
Mhm.
And also, for the record, I wish that show got more than just getting canceled after the first season because
Ugh, I
that really
know.
captured the spirit of it too. But let's be frank here. If we're going to talk about any supporting characters in this movie, it's got to be
Eh,
Jack Black. Jack Black
Uh,
is that guy that hangs out at a record store and just is in love with music because Jack
mhm.
Black is Barry is Jack Black. I is like 100%.
Which is funny because I'm not gonna lie, I could not stand Jack Black after seeing this because he did it so well. I was like, this dude makes me crazy. Like poor Dick's just trying to mind his own business. Rob's just trying to run a business. And you got Barry just ruining the business, but with all that energy, with all
Yes.
that
Oh,
100, like all the time, pedal to like on the floor. Like he is just all the time. But but he played like, and it's hard at that point. Like I'm telling you, it was probably a couple of years before I saw anything else with Jack Black after this because I was like, Jack guy drives me crazy. Like no.
does drive you crazy in this movie because he is so obnoxious. And so I grew up. right in CD, like that transition between tapes and CDs. So I had a huge CD collection at one point. I don't have CDs, I don't have tapes. I listen to Spotify because I can't stand the
Mhm.
radio either. But I do have a record collection because I, no matter how much I want to admit it, I'm a bit of a hipster. Um,
Ah,
so I do have a record collection, and I've been to I love going to record stores. And yes, this just it just has that vibe. You have that feeling. It just captures it so perfectly. And the Princeton Record Exchange, which is the largest record store on the East Coast, was 15 minutes down the road from my college,
oh.
which is also 15 minutes down the road from where I work because, I still work there. 9 years now after I stopped being a student after 6 years. But that record store, and it's funny thing, I barely bought any records from it. I just buy a ridiculous amount of used movies.
Right.
It's a record exchange. I did buy a lot of CDs from there, but when I still had CDs, but this is just it captures that vibe. It has that love of music and that deeply human understanding of relationships and the complexities of them. And just going through these different kinds of relationships. Also, when Ian
Oh
showed
my
up,
gosh.
Tim Robbins. Ugh,
So great. Like
ugh.
I love when he comes to the record shop, all the
Yep.
scenarios they keep going through, especially the last one where Dick just goes off the rails. Like he just starts with the phone, rips out the AC, and you're like, man, that guy's just been waiting to let something out.
Yes. Just God, I this is a video show, so just ugh, ugh.
Ian
The
Raymond. That
the
that screams Ian Raymond.
the jacket, the not just one, but probably two
Right.
buttons open,
Two.
the necklace, the
The purple
chest open,
sunglasses
the,
indoors.
the sunglasses that are like yay big, the lenses, the slicked back hair. Am I remembering he had a ponytail, or did I just create that in my head? Because he feels like he would be the kind of guy that has a ponytail. Uh,
Oh, he had a ponytail.
yeah, it just, oh, God, I hate, I hate him. And that seems so great too,
Yeah.
because yes, the cut back and forth with the things imagining to do. And of course, you have to have a
And
Joan
you're not
Cusack.
sure how many times it's gonna happen.
Yes,
Yes, you always have to have a Joan Cusack.
Joan Cusack popping in there. Also, back to Lisa Bonet. So cool. And like that's like one of the ones where it's just like could have made that work. Could have made that one work, Rob. But Laura,
Yeah.
obviously, with this whole back and forth, are they going to be together and stuff like that?
Mhm.
I just really
During the
love this
longest
movie.
breakup in history. Like
Yes, it was so drawn out. It was like,
like,
rip
that's
the
the
band-aid
only
off.
that is literally the only part of this movie that bothers me is that it takes so long to just cut the cord and be done, which I get that if you did that, that it wouldn't resolve the way it did. But if I was ever in a situation that got drawn out like this, oh my gosh, like it's this is horrible for him. And it did give him time to realize that he had been horrible too. And,
Yes.
and to grow from that, which was, necessary to get to where they were. But it's
Mm.
just, oh my gosh, like how frustrating. You're trying to go to work, you're getting all kinds of frustrated at work. And then, the amount of calling he does to her, but she seems annoyed by it, but she's the one drawing everything out. So it's like, what? You can't be mad at him. You still have stuff at his place. You can't just like get some friends, get your stuff, and get out. Like, why is this like I have to go by myself and take one bag at a time? I've never seen anyone want to be out so badly, but carry one bag at a time every day when she leaves. Like, no, that
Maybe
is not how this works.
because she didn't.
Exactly. Like, that's the
Exactly.
only excuse for it. But
Yes.
it's frustrating to watch when you just keep hearing the words and you're like, girl, you're lying. Like, come on. Like, this is obvious. Don't keep talking to him like he's the one that can't like sever this relationship when it's clearly you.
In the immortal words of Styx, you're fooling yourself. Um, but Patrice, this was a lot of fun. thank you for suggesting this because I got to watch three movies that I hadn't watched before. And
Mhm.
I don't know if I'll rewatch One Crazy Summer, but I will 100% be rewatching Better Off Dead and definitely Bullets Over
Mhm.
Broadway because I have a Amazon wish list for movies that I watch that like I want to add to this insane collection.
Mhm.
When I was like halfway through the movie, I'm like, whoop, I'm adding this one because this this
Absolutely.
but yeah, so thank you, Patrice, for coming on, and make sure to check out whatever Patrice does over at SiftPop. All the fun stuff that we all do, throwing it
Mhm.
out on the internet. But most importantly, it's all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.